anatomical theaters inside, outside the cities, bodies between universities and hospitals in Italy. So we would like to thank the committee for hosting us at this very promising and ambitious conference. My name is Chiara Ianiselli, and together with Chiara Mascardi, co-author of this paper, we will analyze, although briefly due to time constraints, some aspects in the evolving relationship between anatomical theaters, hospitals, and cities in Italy from the late 16th until the late 19th century. This is a multi-faced and highly complex relation, as it will be demonstrated during the presentation. Our research is part of the studies carried out as members of the TISA project, Theater Science Anatomy, whose purpose is to research the history and the evolution of anatomical theaters. We aim to map and to enhance the history of these marvelous historical venues. Anatomical theaters became permanent buildings only at the end of the 16th century. The oldest still surviving is the one in Padua, completed in 1595, described as a huge upside-down telescope by Camillo Semenzato. Right in the city, the first real collaboration between university and hospital was established concerning the training of students. In 1543, indeed, Giovanni Battista da Monte introduced clinical medicine at the Hospital of San Francesco in Padua. The need of a dedicated structure for the anatomy emerged following the necessity of more people to attend the dissection. Joseph Mide's witnesses are extremely remarkable. In 1627, he complained that during the dissection performed by the Regius Professor of Medicine, he could barely see. The need of a dedicated structure slowly emerged, and Cambridge University had anatomical lecture a century later in 1716. At the end of the 16th century and 17th centuries, most universities in Italy had their own anatomy theater. On an operational level, these buildings were connected with the hospitals, as often professors took directly unclaimed body from there. The request of bodies caused many scandals for what concerned social and religious aspects, addressed, for example, in England by the Anatomy Act of 1832. Cardinals and governments established rituals and rules for the passage of the bodies from hospitals to universities. They also ensured that public anatomies were carried out on a yearly basis. Universities and anatomical theater were mostly located in the city center, as we can see, for example, here in the map that I would like to share with you. In Pisa, and we thank Gianfranco Natale, who is currently writing a paper on this, the anatomical theater was constructed after Andrea Vesalio performed dissections at the medical faculty. It was built near the palace of the university, La Sapienza, on the bank of the River Arno, near the city center. It became permanent in the second half of the 16th century. As Luigi Lazzarini noted, Pisa University statutes established that anatomy had to be carried out every year on two bodies of executed criminals that had different gender. The system involved relevant public figures of the city and of the dukedom, the commissioner or captain, the local criminal magistracy, the Florence Aid of Balia, the central criminal magistracy, and the university, the rector. The palace of captain and the university were located on the opposite sides of the river, so the procession could go through the bridge. This passage can be considered highly symbolic, including the fact that public anatomies were organized during the carnival period. The Bologna Permanent Theatre, dating to 1636, was located together with the university in the very center of the city. Anatomical theaters were open to the public on the occasion of public anatomy, a series of official lessons organized during festivity. The audience was composed by students and professors, but also by politicians and nobility. It is important to note that this theatrical ceremonial dissection cannot be considered a research context, also according to modern standards. Despite Vesalius's revolution in 1540s, who demanded that the text to look at was not Galenus, rather the text of the body, the non-lying book of the body, as he called it. The bodies for dissection went under a sort of rite of passage to become part of the dissection. The dissection was defining all these aspects, but things were about to change, and Chiara will take over. Thank you so much.
During the 18th century, great changes led to the transformation of the relationship between medical spaces and cities. Universities and hospitals were moved to the outskirts for two main reasons. Firstly, the increased demand of larger spaces due to the population growth. Secondly, the progressive distancing of the death and the potential diseases connected with it. Anatomical theaters started to be integrated into hospital with the loss of the ritual and public dimension. At first, dissections were carried out both in university and hospitals, as we can see in Padua. In 1706, as a consequence of disagreement arose due to the scarcity of bodies, the government of Venice established that dissection could take place both in Palazzo del Bo and in the Little Anatomical Theatre of San Francesco Hospital. Very soon, however, the small and old hospital could not meet the need of the society, and in 1798, the new Giustiniano Hospital was inaugurated outside the city center, while the University Anatomical Theatre was officially closed in 1872. It's very interesting to notice that in the 17th and 18th centuries, scientific aspect prevail on ritual aspect, but the aesthetic appearance of theater remain important. A good example is the beautiful anatomical theater of Ospedale del Ceppo in Pistoia. The hospital history can be traced back to the end of the 13th century. In the 17th century, it was included in the city walls, and many buildings became part of it, including a cemetery that only in the 1762 was moved outside the city. With the edict of 20 November 1767, the Grand Duke Pietro Leopoldo approved the decision to set up a new anatomical room in the hospital. But instead of equipping a simple room, it was decided to build a real anatomical theater, following the example of other larger hospitals and universities. The small amphitheater responding to the needs of the anatomical extension, while the limited number of seats was more than enough for the 8 students of the time. It was also in line with that spirit of research that had characterized the century of enlightenment, of which we find testimony in the cartouche draw on the west side wall. With the reform of higher education system in 1839, the government decreed the closure of schools in Pistoia and Arezzo due to the low number of students. Only the School of Florence remained active. There, the Hospital of Santa Maria Nuova had an anatomical theatre too, dating back to 1727. In the Regolamento of 1783, we read a description of the room that was highly decorated by Professor Giovacchino Masselli and Santi Pacini. On the walls, they painting allegorical figures that comprehended medicine, imposture, Apollo courted by 3 females representing botany, chemist, and pharmacy. There were also cherubs observing pieces of human bodies, busts of ancient anatomists, mottos, and bas-reliefs. In the 19th century, it became more and more frequent to build anatomical theater in South hospitals, also in small towns like Catanzaro in 1821 and Perugia in 1802. But at the beginning of the contemporary era, anatomical theaters ended up being just theater. As we can see, a specialized audience attended the classes, and the architectural dimension became centered on functionality. Anatomical theater progressively became a safety room for autopsy.